Jasmine Court 10.
What's Jasmine Court 10?
Means it's the 10th thing I've recorded from Jasmine Court.
Oh, wow, okay.
Otherwise known as Vineland Studios.
Vineland Studios. We're low-tech this evening.
We are low-tech because charging issues mean that...
Technical problems.
Frankly, we could have done this in the pub.
Yeah, that might have added a bit of ahhs, but...
Yeah, that would have really freaked Adrian out.
It probably would.
But anyway, hello, our listener. Actually, we'll have an extra listener because hello Mats, because obviously you will listen to this one because we'll get to that anyway. So we're reviewing 7 albums bizarrely tonight. Roger Waters' Dark Side of the Moon Redux, Bergman Embers, The National Laugh Track, the Rolling Stones Hackney Diamonds, Hannah Diamond, Perfect Picture, the Anchoress versions, and Hunny New Planet Heaven. So 7 albums to get your teeth around.
Indeed.
And we are going to start with Roger Waters, obviously ex-Pink Floyd, deciding to mark the 50th anniversary of the release of Dark Side of the Moon by recording his own version of... Pete, how are we feeling about Roger?
A random place to start.
No relatives allowed.
So, there's another album on here, which is an album of covers, which we'll get to shortly. But here's an album of someone covering themselves.
Yes.
In effect. Well, no, actually not in effect. They are covering themselves. And I'll be really honest. I am going to say something positive, but they are managing to somehow remove all the spirit and grace of the original. And I'm not entirely sure why. Okay, so say something positive, Peter. Look, if I was completely unaware of... I mean, imagine a world where I had got, a big knock to my head and I was completely unaware of the existence of Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
Yeah, one of the biggest albums of all time.
And it's like the plot of that film about the Beatles yesterday. Somehow it was completely removed from all existence. Ongoing arguments and politics within the band. I'd somehow forgotten all that as well. And support for Putin's regime and war in Ukraine, etc. Putting all that to one side, I would say that this is an interesting project. And to be honest, if another successful artist of that era and of that ilk did something similar, we would probably be thinking about this in some sort of nostalgic, that's a reframing of a thing that we like. And that's pretty good. And then we'd probably celebrate it a little bit more. And that's not to say I did not like some of the versions on here, because actually, whatever you do to some of these songs, some of them remain great songs. And even on this album,
yes,
they remain great songs because they are great songs, and you've got the original songwriters singing them and covering them. So even it might be more slower, more downbeat versions. But, his covers of Breathe in here, Time, Us and Them, Brain Damage, they all remain really great songs. And even in this version, they are still great songs. However, all those things I mentioned a second ago sort of kick in. And there's this narration that he does across the album as well.
Yes.
Which I still can't quite get my head around, and particularly over the instrumental track, because the instrumentals are great on that album as well. They're great, scene breakers, scene setters. And I have to admit though, despite that, I did feel a little bit sorry for him on The Great Gig in the Sky, because there was obviously a very personal story that he was trying to convey. So I sort of hold back on my criticism, but otherwise this is fairly pointless.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, because obviously this comes out. There's a remastered version of, yet another remastered version of the original Dark Side of the Moon that's come out. Cash in. But as you say, on one level, it's just actually quite an interesting and valid reworking of the album. Valid, obviously, because he was a big part of the band and was the main songwriter in most of these songs.
No, absolutely. I agree.
But the issue for me is a couple of issues. One, that it's now become a very kind of when I listen to it now, I just think it's kind of like a one-paced version of Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds.
Ooh.
As performed by Leonard Cohen.
Okay. I just see where you're going.
With his mix of smoke, with the thing.
Okay.
And it's like...
Right.
And as you say, the annoying thing is that the songs, the album is still a fantastic album.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's one of the best albums
of all time.
It's a fantastic record. But you're kind of taken out, whilst it's not overly extended by the talking bits, it is extended, and I think you're taken out of the natural flow. The album has, in its original format, a really good flow with all the tracks kind of flowing literally into one another. And that doesn't happen anymore because you've got Roger kind of going, and then life was grim. If we wanted that, we could have reviewed the Drake album.
Hey, Katish.
Which we've decided not to on this album, on this particular podcast, because we're thinking that's 2 hours of a life.
We've done that too many times.
Yeah, exactly. We learned a lesson.
Yes.
But this is the thing. This album comes across more as a man who loves the sound of his own voice. More than everything else, so it actually becomes a bit tedious, and it's a shame because, you say, if you just focus in on the actual tracks themselves, then the kind of slowed down, kind of raspy Leonard Cohen-esque kind of reinterpretation of the songs mostly works okay, but it's just you can't get away from Roger Waters.
You can't get away from Roger Waters. You can't get away from this guy who has said some pretty stupid things in the last couple of years geopolitically, has obviously got a decades-long running beef with Nick Gilmour and everyone else. I feel like the album's just been done out of spite because of the endless reissues that obviously, are favouring someone.
I'm sure he's still getting...
I'm sure he's still getting his money out of that as well. He is the principal songwriter at this point in their career, He's just taken all that made this album great. It's just gone. But what remains, as you've put it much more eruditely than I did, what remains is some really great songs, and you've got the original band member songwriter here singing them, albeit differently, and that's fine. It's just there's just so much else wrapped up in this that I just find a bit uncomfortable. Desperation, as someone once said, is the English way.
Speaking of the English way, from a Swede, we move on to Bergman elements. So we should be clear up front here that we actually know Bergman. So, hello, Matt.
Hi, Matt. Deb sends her regards.
Yes. Indeed, Matt and I once worked and recorded a song together back in the dim, dark, distant past.
Where's my wife just shared an office?
Yes. Very rough demo I should add back in the early SoundCloud days.
So it's your story. Your story is better.
Yes. We should point out that the reason, part of the reason we're talking about this is because Matt's actually started life in a Swedish indie pop band called Sense in the 90s. They recorded an album, and not only that, but they had Nina Persson, who obviously became famous as part of the Cardigans, also sang on one of the tracks on that album. However, as we've just kind of alluded to there, when we knew him, he was working in knowledge and information in a global law firm.
Every artist must suffer for their art.
Indeed, yes.
That early flush of fame, that middle period where you had to hang out with the likes of us.
And had to think about taxonomies.
Yeah. And now, hopefully, a resurgence.
Legal taxonomies. I'm waiting for the song Legal Taxonomy, Max. I'm just... That's right. So I'm just going to put that out there now. He's back in Sweden, has been for a while, now married. I'm glad that it's going well. But what is funny about this record still is the fact that clearly London and the UK is still... Clearly right there in the middle of his songwriting. It has been before, but it's still there.
I'm glad we made an impression.
Yeah. 30 minutes long, this album. And you can relax, Matt. I like it. Whether it's the delightful acoustic folk of Loving You and Lady with a Mirror, form of which song has just some really great lead acoustic riff on it. Kiri Ellison, which actually, Roger Waters, has a nice spoken word section. Which gives it almost giving off a kind of, I almost thought a kind of Radiohead almost vibe to it, that track. Title track, which is calling out for some film or TV show to kind of like grab it as incidental music. There's that song that has a kind of noodling kind of piano Coldplay-esque loop riff on it. Is that the I Hear You Northern 2 one, I think?
Yeah, that's that one.
Yeah. Lovely outro guitar work on that. There's some prog rock kind of synth noodling on You Look So Pretty While You Dig My Grave. Great song title. And of course, the album starts with the lyrically marvellous Queen Ember and the Poll Tax Riots, which is kind of depicting some kind of alternate reality, perhaps. And it's all quite lovely. I love the fact that there's quite a wide use of kind of looping riffs across the record.
Yeah.
So it's quite simplistic in that sense, but actually works really well for the way that Mats has actually constructed the songs. Always loved the way Mats does backing vocals and harmonies. One of the things he brought to our tune, in fact, when we did our thing together, and this record was a fine reminder of just how kind of on it he is for that kind of thing. Yeah. Interestingly as well, I thought we're going to review an album later on. I reckon, if the National suddenly lose their lead singer and then looking for someone to step in, one Mats Bergman, I think, would fit in quite nicely.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the National. I'll come to that later, but probably at the end of the podcast. I agree. Look, this, obviously looking at this, because it's very rare that we actually review someone we know. Looking at this as objectively as I can, I really enjoyed this album. Forget the prior relationship. I actually really enjoyed this album, and as you say, it's a mixture of heavy folk and occasional prog rock. I thought it was a really great mix. There's such a beautifully told story right across the album, from the, as you say, the amusing historic or anti-historic opener, Queen Emma. It does take us on a journey, and it does take us on a journey through the soul of England, and perhaps an England that has seen or could see better days, which perhaps only someone from overseas could actually convey in a way we wish we all could. Yes. I think it's but it's also a romantic record as well. Romantic, of course, about the country, but romantic, of course, about relationships. There's a muse in there. It's just lovely. It's just really nice. And you mentioned, Loving You, Kiri Ellison. I also really like Cold Rain as well. That was a particular standout for me. It's just such a lovely, warm and short, which is always good in our situation, record to get into.
Yes, absolutely, Matt. Thank you very much. 30 minutes.
We got a long podcast tonight.
Eternal love.
Exactly. No, love this album. It's great.
As I just mentioned, the National. Let's do the National next.
Cool. Okay.
With Laugh Track. One of the two artists on the podcast that we've reviewed before, and we have reviewed them before more than once. However, last time I reviewed them was literally 2 podcasts ago.
It was.
With the first 2 pages of Frankenstein, which we reviewed on podcast 4, which we both liked. I think I liked slightly more than you, but we both still thought was actually pretty
absolutely.
decent. Yeah. The big question is, though, do we need another hour of the National?
There's a lot to like here too. I actually think it's an amazing second album. I say second album. Second album. Second album in the last. Second album of 2023. Yeah. It's not not the second album as a whole, but it's, if anything, it's perhaps more diverse than their earlier 2023 effort. And I'm going to introduce an element of slight nitpickiness. I don't think the quality is consistent. However, it's such a worthy companion piece. It's an album. Of course, it's an album in its own right. Have they not described it as the 10th album? The last one being the 9th album, I believe.
Yes,
I've read somewhere.
Yeah, yes.
So it's definitely not a companion piece to the previous album. Often when artists release an album so soon, there's some sort of companion. It's not. It's an album in its own
like
right.
Taylor Swift and Folklore and...
Yes.
This is strange. You've had the
No,
involvement of the Man for the National.
Yeah, that was also an... Okay, indeed. But that was also an album in its own right as well. So
Indeed,
maybe this is a trend.
Yes.
Why record one album when you can do two? I think what stands this one apart is there's a little bit more of the live sound. I think the previous album was a lot sort of reliant on the sort of electronic sounds and the soundscapes. This actually brings the drummer and some of the instruments to the fore. So it rocks out a bit more on certain tracks. It also features the previously standalone single with Bon Iver.
Yes.
Which sort of has a home, but it sits perfectly well here. But this is followed on the album by some great originals as well. Such as Turn Off the House, Dreaming, and later on you've got Coat on a Hook, which I really enjoyed as well. I actually feel that many more of the tracks on this one feel more alive, a bit more passion on this album, maybe. So having said that earlier, that nitpicky thing about the inconsistency, I don't think that matters, because I actually think there's more life to this album. There's obviously a couple of other collaborations on here that I liked. The one that stands out for me, the other one that stands out for me is the Phoebe Bridgers one.
Okay.
Laugh track. I think Space Invaders epic. It feels like it should be the album closer, but then I think it's like the beginning of side 2 if we're going to split it into the old-fashioned sides. But then that's followed by Hornets, which is lovely and slow. So that was another favourite of mine.
It should be Hornets.
Hornets. It should be Hornets, but it's not. It's just Hornets. Hold steady joke for you there, folks. So yeah. Really enjoy this album. I might even rank it higher than the last one on my final end of year list. Spoiler alert.
Oh, see, I disagree.
You're a pain.
Yeah.
It's best when we disagree, though, folks.
Yeah.
It makes good podcasting.
So I'm thinking, to me, it was like, do we need 2 albums from the National this year? And for me, it's
no,
not so sure. Because for me, the album was summed up by the first 3 tracks.
Yeah.
So it starts off with Alphabet City.
Yeah.
Which for me feels meandering and just doesn't go anywhere.
Fair.
And it's just like, it's the lead track. It's like, oh no. And then you go into Deep End, which kind of like goes, oh, yeah. Just pulling me back in, thinking, oh yeah, this is more like a national anthem.
I really like that one.
Yeah, I really like that.
I put that on my also liked as well. Yeah.
But then you get to Weird City, which you mentioned, which I'm going to go, okay, now we're back.
We're in.
Okay,
okay.
This is good. This is good. And so the album had got me there. At that point, I was going, right, take me to the rest of the thing. And then it's just, the problem for me was that it was too up and down for me. So I was going from, for me, instantly forgettable and can't really name the track kind of things to, oh, quite like this. And then, oh, really like this. So one of the other collabs that you didn't mention, the Rosanne Cash one, Crumble.
Yeah.
Really, really liked.
I didn't like that one as much.
But with Long Weird Goodbye and Deep End.
Yeah,
and it was just like, the last album was for me so much better. I mean, for this it was just like, and also it's an hour long. And for me, it felt like an hour long.
Oh, I didn't.
On each of the 3 listens I did, it felt like an hour.
Wow. Okay.
And I just really couldn't. And I quite like that. I've always quite liked the National, but on this podcast there were 2 albums on this list.
Yeah.
That even on multiple plays, I just couldn't.
Yeah.
Find my way in.
I think I know what the other one is. But
this was.
The first album of 2023 by the National, it's high on my list for the year. I'll be honest. I'll be up front. It is actually quite high on my list.
Yeah.
This one's right now probably just a place above it, just a place, which probably means they end up in the same place overall. But I think they've had a great year.
Yeah, I mean it's not an awful record.
Yeah,
it's just Okay, back to old people.
Who are we reviewing now that's old?
The Strolling Rones.
Oh, right, okay.
The Rolling Stones, Hackney Diamonds. 24th studio album. This is true. 24th studio album if we're in the UK. 26th if you're in the USA.
Ah.
But it is the first in 18 years since the exceedingly average A Bigger Bang.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that remember that. I do. And this is quite an interesting one because, one, most people didn't think the Roasters were going to produce an album of new material, and shock horror, when they did, suddenly the reviews came in and majority of people were going, actually, this doesn't suck.
Always a great place to start.
Yeah. And I agree with those majority of people, because actually this album doesn't suck.
Yeah.
It has really top drawer opening 3 tracks, which love an album that starts off strong, which back to the national thing, I think one of the weakest, regardless of what you think of the album, I think Alphabet City, Alphabet, whatever it's called, is one of the weakest tracks on that album.
Fair. Yeah. I didn't note it.
And so get off to start. So they get off with Angry, Get Close, and Depending on You. Interestingly, all those 3 songs are co-written by producer Andrew Watt.
Mm-hmm.
Is any direct writing influence on the album. So Angry has the classic simple kind of like kind of jarry riff.
Yeah.
Kind of very simple, but it really kind of works. And after you've heard this song a couple of times, you kind of go, you find yourself kind of like walking along and go, whilst also thinking it does sound like something else. But the thing is, you get that across the album altogether. There are moments where you're thinking, that sounds like something else. But sometimes what it sounds like is somebody that's ripped off the Rolling Stones. and you kind of you're almost on a kind of loop thing. But anyway, so that's a good start. I think Get Close is the second track of the album. Possibly my favourite song on the album, actually. I think it's really just cracking tune. Depending, also good. Then you get a kind of wishy-washy bit in the middle, which is like, which we'll get back to. And then it ends, again, on 3 good tracks. So you Tell Me Straight, which is Keith doing his Martin Gore moment, the token... I write most of the good stuff, but now I'm going to get to sing a song. But it's a really lovely song. And you got Sweet Sound of Heaven, which is basically quintessential Stones, harking back to Gimme Shelter and Shine a Light style kind of stuff with kind of gospel tinged blues rock. With added Lady Gaga turned up to 11, 12, 13, whatever. And some Stevie Wonder playing keys as well. And then finishing with an acoustic version of the Muddy Waters song, Rolling Stones, which is where they got their name from. In between that, you've got some mixed stuff, should we say? Bite My Head Off, which is very sweary, and the Stones trying to be kind
sweary,
of punk and radical.
Don't do it.
Which has Macaron bass.
Yeah, I'm going to say something about him.
Yeah. But the thing about that is it's rubbish, but I have found myself humming it. So, although I haven't found myself humming Dreamy Skies, which again is a very Stonesy kind of thing, but it's a kind of laid back kind of honky tonk kind of thing, and it's fine, but it's kind of like it's still better than Live by the Sword, which is just awful. It's just Jesus. Truly awful. But the thing is, this is actually pretty decent. You think a band that have been going for so long, and yes, it's going. They've kind of trying to go slightly modern and go commercial. So they're going. It's like, well, yes, because they wanted to sell some fucking records. It's like, why would they just kind of like trot out, literally sounding something that sounded like from the mid-70s? The songwriting on it is pretty good. The songs sound all right, and this is by a far way not the worst album on this podcast. It's an enjoyable record. As I said to you in the pub earlier on, they might have been a bit pissed off with the Beatles kind of going, that's nice, it's good you're having a lot of fun. We're going to release a single now. in a kind of like sorry, what fucking retro universe are we in? When you're just going, it's just like before, yes. We're just going back
Just go do that. Just go do it.
We're going back to the 60s and 70s, and you're still going to go, that's lovely, but we're releasing the first thing we've done in 50 years.
Yeah.
It's fine, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Are we going to mention the single?
You can mention the single.
I don't know. Are we going to talk about the Beatles?
We can. I'd prefer to talk about the Stones first. And
Let's talk about the Stones first. Okay. Maybe we save the Beatles for the end. Unlike every other podcaster who's obviously got lead on it. But there's something I want to say about Macca that does actually chime with. Anyway, I agree. I agree with much of what you said. Actually, it's a very clean sounding record as well.
It is very clean. Yes.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It sort of lacks a little bit of the fizz that you'd perhaps.
Which I might come back to when we do talk about the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the parallel. One of the parallels, I think, and that is to say, production-wise, it does feel very much like it's now, but also then. Sorry, it is classic Stones done well. It's a solid effort, and I mean solid as in the good solid, not the bad solid. My question is long term. You mentioned the Bigger Bang, which we've all forgotten about.
Yeah.
Will this be remembered in 18 years' time? This album, because whilst it's got some good stuff on it, it's not classic. Is it? And when you think about actually, I think what perhaps lets it down is maybe they could have done a bigger thing, or even a bigger bang, about the fact that, this is the first album in 18 years. It's also the first album, whilst it features Charlie, it's the first album without Charlie, even though he's on it, and it's the last album that Charlie's on. And it feels like a set of solid Rolling Stones standards, but nothing really leaps out. I agree with you completely about Angry and Get Close. They are my two favourite tracks on it. I actually thought Dreamy Skies had a bit of that old Stones soulful swagger about it. Swagger.
No, it does have that.
From Jagger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it had that. I also like Driving Me Too Hard, which is sort of, again, tail end of the album-ish. And I agree with you, the cameos, I mean, Bite My Head Off, yeah, it's the single-ish. Actually, I would say that you'd barely know that Macca was on there.
But it does have the bass there is a bass solo.
There is a bass, of sorts, yes, but it's not. And do you know what? Live by the Sword is all over the place. You wouldn't. Obviously, it sounds like Elton John is there, but you wouldn't necessarily know Elton John is there.
Well, Elton's on two of the tracks, I think.
I think that's the one where he's most Elton sounding.
I know, but he's not singing. So that's in a way, I quite like the fact
that's okay. So that's been
him and Stevie are both on there.
So there's lots
providing musicianship for
but then when Lady Gaga turns up, Lady Gaga is there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're up to
we're there with that. So I think all that said, it ticks along at a decent pace. It's an enjoyable listen. It's not the worst album of the podcast, but will I think about it in 18 years or even 18 weeks' time?
We'll get back to the same conversation about the Beatles single at the end of the podcast.
It's fair. Yes.
Actually, let's do it now. So I would say it's exactly the same comment about the Beatles thing. But obviously, I sent you a baiting message the other day. Saying that I thought the Beatles single was shit.
Okay.
But that the remix of Love Me Do was excellent.
Yes.
Obviously, that's a very simplistic view of what I actually think. I actually think the single is actually, for what it is, very good. Yeah. And I like the fact that it's actually based quite a lot around minor chords. And I'm always a sucker for minor chords over major chords in songwriting things. But you still get to that kind of thing of thinking kind of what's, apart from the fact it's going to make them lots of money and talking about it, what's it really adding to the canon, and would it actually have ever come out as a thing previously. So in and of itself, it's quite an interesting thing, and it's quite nice that it's been done, and the technology behind it and all that is very interesting. But again, even though I've just said that actually, to contradict myself to a certain extent, on the Stones thing, that actually it sounds quite modern and that's quite good. In some ways, the fact that the Beatles thing sounds so modern feels kind of wrong to me. So whilst the kind of song itself is not bad, it just, again, what you're saying, I'm thinking, am I seriously going to be in 10 years' time having got a playlist of my favourite Beatles songs? No.
Yeah.
You know. But the remix of Love Me Do is spectacularly good.
Okay, here it comes, the Now and Then review. We never reviewed the Beatles on this podcast, and we never will again.
Probably won't review the Stones again, either, I'm guessing.
I know. No, it's funny, because we were meant to meet this time last week when it came out, originally.
We were.
And I'm glad that we're meeting now, because it's given me time to sort of listen to it a handful of times and sort of take it in, which I'll come back to. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's very contradictory. It is... Yeah, some of that is deliberate, of course. It is it is modern, and it is Rubber Soul, or even Abbey Road. It is young John, old Paul. It's happy, it's sad, it's somber, it's funny. I actually think, for once, Paul's contribution is quite measured in terms of his vocals, in terms of his own guitar playing. George Harrison's acoustic guitar, which is on there, is also quite measured, versus Paul's slide guitar, a la George, which is obviously out there and obvious, as is the string arrangement towards the end. The string arrangement actually is quite subtle until you get towards the end, and it's real like, okay, there's the Beatles strings again. I think it's a fine song, but I agree with you, actually. What will it mean in a few years' time? It's been inserted into the canon. It's at the end of the reissue of extended version of Blue.
Yes,
for some reason.
Well, financial to sell more copies of it.
Yeah. It's there, and actually, but you're absolutely right. I think "Free as a Bird" is a fine song, but it's nowhere near my list of favourite Beatles songs.
I forgot about "Free as a Bird." You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously,
and what I actually think this song Now and Then has over "Free as a Bird" is that Lennon is there, whereas even on "Free as a Bird," he's kind of he's like a spectral ghost in the distance somewhere.
Well, back to the kind of the chord kind of progression, and the fact that it's I prefer the chord progression in this song than "Free as a Bird." I always thought "Free as a Bird" always just sounded a bit kind of Travelling Wilburys.
Yellow. Yeah, exactly.
That's not, and that's no offence. That's no offence to
Jeff Lynne.
Absolutely not. Both of them I love.
Yeah.
But
no, it was always very. And whereas this, you could argue, it's got that modern sound because Paul McCartney's there. It could be a latter day Paul McCartney production.
Yeah.
Which clearly is. I think it's. Yeah, I think it's there. It's a fine song. It's the fact that Lennon is there in this, and it actually sounds like the four of them, whereas "Free as a Bird" sounded like 3 or 4 parts coming together. I think this actually feels like a bit more together, and the technology has enabled that.
Saying that bizarrely, that's the technology, isn't it?
That's the technology, but the technology, and I completely agree with you on this point, has enabled a beautiful remix of "Love Me Do," which has got me so excited about the reissue of the Red album in particular. I can't wait to hear that, because if they've done that to "Love Me Do," what else is out there that they can now do for the early 60s stuff? Because that is amazing. That has completely turned my head around on that particular song.
Yeah, I mean, they have used the kind of spatial kind of thing. If you're sitting listening to that on any kind of decent piece, or good headphones.
It's amazing.
Again, it does sound really, and it's not in a horrible, overproduced kind of way as well. So it's actually been done quite well. So it actually does still sound like there are just a couple of instruments there and a vocal.
Yeah.
there's no. They've cleaned up the noise.
Yeah.
Which in a way, but again, there's always an argument that's part of what makes things good, and I get that as well.
No, not at all.
On another day, I'd argue that case as well.
Yeah, but I think it's stunning.
But it's great.
Very excited about Red. Love the remixes that have come out actually in the last few years. But
Taylor Swift Red.
Sorry?
Taylor Swift Red.
No, the Beatles Red. Right, should we move on?
Yeah, we're going to get a young person.
Ooh!
So having done Hackney Diamonds, we're going to Hannah Diamond.
Hey!
And Perfect Picture.
Look how he set that
second
up.
studio album from British songwriter, singer and visual artist, Hannah Diamond. And she made this album in collaboration with Dave Gamson, who used to be a member of Scritti
Wow. Okay.
But he's also done lots of production stuff since then.
Yeah.
Worked with lots of people. So, Pete, pop time.
I know. You always call on me when it's pop time. And I always surprise you by saying, yes, right. Look, this is life-affirming female-led smart pop. I just invented that genre.
Hashtag Pete.
It rolled off the tongue. It has... Look, this album has its moments for sure. But I have to admit, the first time I listened to it, the first half of the album in particular felt very samey. It was all like treading through, sort of, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't always the case. Not when repeated listen. And I want to stress this, on repeated listen, it did feel better to me overall. I actually started to really quite get into it. I always love pop music. I think I'm probably no longer the demographic for this one, but and I feel like it's been done better before, if I'm being really cruel and honest. But that said, the second half of the album feels very varied, very diverse. There's loads to get into there. On repeated listen, it's great. By the time I hit the fifth listen to this album, I'll probably really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And like all perfect pop, it's throwaway as well. It's, you know, and that's what it should be, and it's short. In terms of the tracks, I really like, again, some of the lyrics on some of the songs. I mean, Affirmations kind of touches on the theme of the album, that's like life-affirming female-led smart pop.
Yep.
Hashtag Pete. And I loved Impossible, which I can't decide if it's a love song to a dating profile or actually a love song to an AI boyfriend. And I think it's the latter. I think it is the latter. I think we're now in that phase where artists are singing love songs about imaginary people that exist only online. How 2023 is that?
Well, yeah, that is true.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. And Twisted was good as well.
Yeah, so this again, when I first I had a similar feeling to you the first listen through, actually. In fact, I almost had to kind of argue with myself over this album to force myself to kind of go, no, this is actually quite enjoyable. And like various things going in life help me do that. But with the first listen, it kicks off with the title track, and my first feeling when the first moments of the first song starting was, this is like an auto-tuned version of Dubstar.
Oh, I didn't think about Dubstar. Yes, but auto-tune being the crucial word there.
Yeah, because there's a lot of auto-tune on this album.
And what made Dubstar great was indie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you listen to the whole album, and as you say, it is pure power pop. It's you've got you know, Aqua, Bewitched, Spice Girls, even hints of Laura from Churches, particularly on the song. I thought on the song Poster Girl, I thought the vocal was very kind of similar to that. Yeah. I was half expecting an 80s version of Vince Clarke to show up and kind of like as being kind of guest person.
I wrote Little Boots down in my notes. Has anyone thought of Little Boots recently?
Boots, indeed. Yes, no, absolutely good point.
But again, someone that's sort of done that. But again, she was a bit more. She was a different pop star again. Yeah, still is, but you know.
Yeah, but as you say, it is just like 30 odd minutes of unashamed bubblegum pop. And there's definitely nothing wrong with that. In a week where Girls Aloud have just announced that they're about to get together and release a new album and go on tour next year. You know, so we're in the moment.
Coaching.
I agree with this. I think the start of the album for me was really good. So you get the opening track, which I really liked. Affirmations, which you mentioned, which is like best version of me as myself kind of thing.
I'm my own CEO.
Yeah. Flashback, which is talking about On Flames and stuff like that. FX, which is possibly the most knowing song on the album. Because going, because there's a line going, you love me with FX on, or no, or you don't live with FX on a song that's so auto-tuned out of its arse. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
But it's kind of meta.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have to get the auto-tune on her vocal did start to kind of get on my nerves a bit as the album went on. But still, it's a short record and it's an uplifting, fun record. And, you know, we need more of uplifting, fun records. So
yeah, we do.
Yeah, good on her. I thought it was right.
Yeah, as again, deserves repeated listening.
Yeah.
Get past the cynicism, Peter.
Yeah. Okay. We go on to so we're going to Hunny, New Planet Heaven. So it's the second album by this band. Kerrang rated this 4 out of 5, which is why I thought we'd give it a spin. So the opening track it's called Bothering, which has a plinky plonky piano thing, which morphs into sort of Cure, New Order, indie riff. If it was played by a kind of wannabe Blink 182 covers band. I struggled with this record. On the positive side, the band have tried not to produce an album of just 12 identikit songs. So it's not just one song played over and over again, different versions of which you can get in this kind of genre of music. So hats off for that. However, for me, it seemed like they'd just taken the worst elements of bland indie pop from the 90s and noughties and thrown them all into one record. I did think of Top Loader more than once during listening to this album. It's not a space I want to be in, I'm sorry. I didn't mind the kind of Weezer-esque song Solo that's in the middle of the album. I thought that was quite good.
Only Weezer can be Weezer. Though.
Yeah. And it's just... And you know, it's not that it's...
Speaking of Red Albums.
It's Red Albums, yes. It's not that it's awful, but it's just... I mean, I quite like... You know, we did... Was it 5 Days of Summer and...
yes. Yeah, we did.
Best things.
It's fine.
I like... It's
fine as a genre.
I like this genre of music. I'm quite happy to do this. But for me, this album just didn't connect with me at all.
No. I hate to say it, this is the loser of the podcast for me.
It is.
In a podcast of 7 albums. One of them had to come bottom. And that's not to say it's bad, because as you've absolutely pointed out, absolutely rightly, it is varied.
Yeah.
It's a nice blend of indie, alt pop, whatever that means, and the occasional shoegaze in there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Big Star and a ballad the ballad in My Own Age. So all in all, that is a refreshing listen. It's a relatively easy listen, even if it is a little bit middle of the road. When I say middle of the road, I mean obviously middle of the Blink 182 road. So it's not boring. It just follows a formula at times. The pop sensibilities of the obvious single 89cc shine through. I like that. That's good. I like that one.
Yeah, that's right.
16 Stitches and Botherer, which I think a couple of open tracks are alright. Palm Reader was the closing track. That was okay. But yeah, agree with you.
Actually, Palm Reader was alright.
Yeah, Palm Reader was alright. So there's enough in there to keep you interested. I don't know where they go with this. Somewhere.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I said Kerrang gave him 4 out of 5. So
yeah, exactly. So it's all right. It's worthy, but no, not today.
So we finished with the Anchoress. who we've reviewed before.
We have?
So, yes, so...
when did we review them?
Podcast 4, 2001. Baby.
Well done.
Yes.
Good. Glad you
The
know.
album The Art of Losing. But Catherine Ann Davis is back. I should say we really liked that album, so if you want to go back, we genuinely like that album.
Yeah.
She's come back with an album of covers of...
Covers.
As said to me, covers of stuff she really liked.
Covers of covers. Yeah.
As opposed to stuff she didn't really like.
Yeah.
And it has to be said that some interesting artists... Well, I actually want to read the artists for just a So Depeche Mode, New Order, Radiohead, The Cure, Nirvana, Nico, All About Eve, Halsey, Manic Street Preachers, and R.E.M. But why it's quite interesting is, whilst there are a few obvious choices, which I'm sure you're going to get to, there are... It's mostly not... No, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's actually surprisingly not obvious choices, generally speaking.
Agree. Yeah. I this in a competition of two, this is the best covers album we've reviewed this podcast. But what's brilliant about this is it perfectly captures and distills the spirit of the original songs, unlike the guy that wrote the original songs on that other one we started with. It feels more than a covers album. It actually feels like it's got some love and soul in it. And also she's managed to bring out something quite unique from each version of the song as well. She hasn't just done the straight cover. She's made each song her own, whilst obviously nodding to the original, whatever the original.
I'd say there's one exception to that, but
okay, well, I'll leave that for you. I mean, it opens with Enjoyed the Silence, which is... I struggle with covers of Enjoyed the Silence because there's so bloody many. This is up there with best of them, I guess. I always feel really funny about reviewing this song when someone's covered it. Because I'm just, obviously enamoured with the original. But props to her for the frame-by-frame cover she did on the video, which is basically the video by Depeche Mode covered by the Anchoress, which is amazing. So check that out. Penny Royalty is probably my favourite track on here. And also, and this will come as no surprise, probably one of the more recent songs is The Tradition by Halsey.
Yeah.
Which, despite what I've all said about making it her own, she does actually perfectly capture Halsey collab 9 Inch Nails. She's got that 9 Inch Nails sound in her cover somehow, which can't have been easy to recreate.
She has a voice that suits that kind of thing.
Yeah. But it's, again, different to Halsey, but recognisable as 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that too. And This Is Yesterday's another one I noted down as actually particularly enjoying.
Yeah, but and she's done that one many times. Obviously, she's, as we mentioned when we reviewed it before, her and the Manics are... good mates, so she's performed with them many times.
So I know I really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed this album. It's good.
Yeah, I think you're saying. I think what makes it work is that it hangs together. Hangs together as an album. She's taken an approach to it that, I mean, in some ways you're going, it is that classic. I'm just going to do slower versions of the songs kind of thing, which is for the most part true.
Yeah.
However, by taking that approach, it does mean that the thing hangs together as a record rather than just being here's me just doing covers of my favourite songs and see how it sounds. As you say, it starts with the Enjoy Silence cover. I think is really excellent.
Yeah. Despite my feelings, it is.
Yeah. And then goes into Bizarre Love Triangle by New Order. Bizarrely, I'd have preferred if it had been less bassy. Because that was a bit let me down slightly.
It's too much, yeah. No,
You're just thinking, it's one of those things that it's not a song that I know brilliantly by New Order. But the first time I listened to the album without looking, kind of look at what the track list was, I kind of went, okay, this is a New Order.
That's the New Order one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, let's try and copy the kind of Peter Monkey type bass kind of thing. That was slightly annoying, but after that, as you say, mostly it's kind of avoids being copyist, except for bizarrely on Martha's Harbour by All About Eve, which is almost exactly the same as the original version. I I was a huge All About Eve fan in my younger days. Saw them a couple of times live in Glasgow. Really loved Julian Regan. But for this song, anytime I hear this song, I cannot get the Top of the Pops performance out of my head. When they were sat there as a band, just sat doing nothing, whilst the music was playing out to people at home, but wasn't playing out to them to mime to. And it was just one of the classic. It'll be on YouTube, kids. Just do a search for it.
For the children, Top of the Pops was a popular show on TV a long time ago.
Indeed. But as you said, the rest of it's really, really good. And what I really liked the closing track, a cover of Sweetness Follows by R.E.M. I thought was just really, really heartfelt and moving.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. Beautiful. So yeah. So we've probably talked for enough, frankly.
We have. Well, we had a few bases to cover, and we've not been around much, and that's a bumper one.
Yeah. So Roger Waters' album of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Roger Waters is the album of the podcast. No. No, never. Look, for me, it's a draw. I know I preferred the National. But I have to say, look, personal feelings aside, I thought the Bergman album was really good. I really enjoyed it.
I have to agree. I have to agree. I think our old mate Matt's done good, frankly. It's almost like he has some talent or something. Yeah.
It's almost like he did, yeah. But he clearly did.
Yeah.
My word.
Okay, Matt.
Love to sweeten.
We will email you and tell you the bank details.
Yeah.
To transfer the money to. Until then. Also, it's going to be interesting to hear how this actually sounds, given that it's recorded on an iPhone, and I'm going to have to try and make it sound.
Well, good luck with that.
Yes, this will come out next year.
Yeah, exactly. After the Christmas special. Goodbye.
Farewell.